Terrence Davis, who is a high-end harness maker, makes harness by hand in the United Kingdom, and does wonderful, beautiful, highly skilled harness for a variety of horses, mostly for show and that sort of thing, and divides his time and skills in that realm with going to Ethiopia and trying to improve the quality of harness in places where donkeys are essential to agriculture, they're essential to people's lives, and sometimes they have to work in really egregious equipment. So Terry's been good enough to come all the way out here to talk to you about how harness is made, how it functions, what constitutes good harness, what constitutes harness that is ill-fitting or bad. And he's going to be helped a little bit here by Stephen Decatur here, a friend of mine from many years ago, who is a horse farmer here in California, the center of industrial agriculture. He and his wife Gloria have made a living doing that with horses and some with donkeys. And we're going to talk a little bit about how harness that is used for work animals as opposed to pulling a cart or a wagon is different. And I've instructed Terry and Steve and all the other speakers to not be afraid to tell me what is wrong with my harness, which this actually, Jenny's got some pretty nice harness on her from Chimacum Tack. Poor Larry, his stuff is a combination of purchased harness and harness that we got on Craigslist and some things that Cindy invented. Well, literally. And anyway, it works. I appreciate your patience with my donkeys. They've come to the big town here. They're used to being out where we live in the bypass and just driving on the farm road. So this is a crowd is like a really new thing to them. And of course, they're taking it like donkeys. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Terry, and we're going to start talking about how harness works and how it should and shouldn't work.
To be talking about the importance of harness and its dynamics from the perspective of the harness maker. I spend more time making harness than I do using it, so I'm going to try and explain how it all works. Now, I do know that this is a donkey symposium, but because it's about harness, because I'm here to speak about harness, I think we also have to include horses and mules, because harness works pretty much the same way for all equine. Now, you're probably not going to like me very much when I say that equines are, well, just simply humble beasts of the field who graze grass from one end and manage to fertilize it again from the other. And before anybody screams at me about that, I'll redress that by saying that it's with the application of harness that these wonderful animals are transformed into multi-purpose power tools capable of doing many, many things to our benefit. Hence the importance of harness. Now, much of what I have to say about harness regarding it is primarily based at aiming at problems that I find in developing countries where donkeys like this are still used extensively in terms of for livelihood and such like. I've had the opportunity to travel fairly extensively in many of these developing countries and have seen the problems firsthand, and believe me, it really is not a pretty sight. However, it really does not need to be like that, because most of the problems that are seen, hello, are simply as a consequence of lack of knowledge, and in having a better understanding of the dynamics of harness and harness design, many of these problems can be overcome. Now, first and foremost, for working equine to perform at their best, the equipment they use needs to be fit for purpose. Now, when I say fit for purpose, I mean that it should be complete, it should be comfortable for the animal, and it should allow the animal to move freely without constraint or risk of injury. Now, historically, harness and harnessing methods have changed very little over the past 1,000 years. And so there, as it stands, harness today still works in exactly the same way. The criterion was established, and it is still applied to the harness. So most of what you see here, in fact, the design of it goes back that length of time. Harnessing starts with the 4 principles of draft, and the 4 principles of draft are steering, transmission, weight distribution, and braking. And for each of these principles, there is a corresponding component part that works in relation to it. And so, for example, we have for steering, we have the bridle. For transmission, we have the collar, which is either a breast collar or a full neck collar. For weight distribution, we have the saddle. And for braking, we have the crupper. And each of these parts work independently in their respective roles, and together make harness complete. Now we are in this instance talking about single harness, and all these components are essential to the proficiency of the animal. Should any of the parts be missing, it will be difficult for the animal to function. So we'll take a look at how these parts work. And Eric has very kindly loaned us his donkeys. I couldn't bring mine because it failed the visa application. I feel that perhaps I may be preaching to the converted, but a lot of what I have to say I'm sure will be familiar to you, but I'm hoping that you just might find a few useful snippets worthwhile. So anyway, let's just take a look at the designs. As I said in the first instance, steering, well, that is conveyed through the bridle, and the bridle simply is designed primarily just to carry the bit. It holds the bit in the horse's mouth, and of course that is your steering. You have the reins attached to the bit, which then lead back to the driver, and that gives the driver the opportunity to be able to guide the animal to wherever it wishes to go. And then we come to the transmission, which is through the collar. Now the collar can be either a breast collar or a full neck collar, like we have here, we'll come back to those because these are the most important bits, and perhaps the least understood, I think. Then we have the weight distribution, which is the saddle. Now, with the saddle, this is designed to carry a backband, and a backband is what supports the shafts that lie along either side of the animal. And then we have the crupper, and this is the braking mechanism, so that when your animal is either slowing down or going downhill or perhaps reversing, the full weight is taken round the hind quarters. With the breeching, it also includes the crupper and the hip straps. The crupper also plays an important role. It's like a sort of secondary issue to the braking. There are times when perhaps your breech is not correctly adjusted, and when the horse is going down, or the donkey I should say, is going downhill or reversing, sometimes the shaft can move quite a bit forward, and that's when the crupper comes into play and helps support the strain that's being taken on the breeching. Now, if we'll look at the backband a bit closer here now, because as I said, it is designed to carry a backband which will support the shaft on either side. The backband connects into what we call tugs, which are like circular pieces of leather into which the shafts lie. And the important thing is that backbands need to be what we call floating. They need to be able to float, because as the animal moves, there is, I'm sure as drivers you all know it and you see it, that when you're behind the animal, as it is moving, as it is trotting, there is movement that goes from side to side. And with having a floating backband, it allows the saddle to stay in its position, but the backband actually floats from side to side slightly. It becomes more apparent when you are going perhaps across a piece of uneven ground sideways, and you'll find that the vehicle tilts sideways, therefore the shafts tilt sideways, and again with having the floating backband, that's able to move with it, and the animal is able to stay upright and the saddle is able to stay in place. It doesn't move. This is the important thing, because should the saddle be able to move, it will then cause friction and cause rubbing, and that can actually be a problem. Now, when we come to the collars, as I said, this is the most important bit. You have two choices. You have full collars or you have breast collars. Now, breast collars are, for want of a better expression, a cheap option. They can work and they do work, but they are not as efficient quite as a full neck collar. Now, a breast collar is what lies around the front of the animal's chest, as it were, breast, and it's supported by a neck strap that goes up over the top and attaches to it and holds it in place. And at either end of the breast collar there is a buckle or perhaps a ring onto which your traces attach, and the traces then go back to the point of impact where it's attached to the vehicle. And this is where the draft takes place. Now, the important thing about draft is that you need to be able to find and to know the point of draft on an animal, where it takes where the optimum point is which is comfortable for the animal to be able to perform. And so the point of draft, it's actually more of an art than a science, but it lies in the region of just about this area here. And there is a distance of about maybe 3 inches up and down slightly that make differences, that can make a difference to how the animal is actually working. Now, the failing of the breast collar, as I said, it works and it can work quite efficiently when you've got a light cart going over a smooth surface. It does the job perfectly well. But if your donkey is going to do a little bit more serious work, then you are better off having the full neck collar. The breast collar lies 6 or 7 inches below the optimum point of draft. So that makes it not quite as efficient. It's about 25% less efficient than the full neck collar. Now, when it comes to the neck collar, this is where we have the problems, because the neck collar to the donkey, horse or mule is rather like a shoe to your foot. It has to fit and fit well. And the only way that this can be done is to actually measure your animal for the collar. The other important thing about a collar as well is the fact that it does need to be rigid, because animals, horses, donkeys or mules, they do not actually pull. And it's a misconception to think of animals as pulling. They push. An animal has to push forward from its hind quarters to be able to pull. And so by having the collar and having it the right size and in the right position, the animal is then moving forward and pushing into that, and this is where it has to be comfortable. Now, when you put a new collar on a donkey or a horse, it's rather like putting on a new pair of boots. You don't buy a pair of hiking boots and go on a 20-mile hike. That's the wrong thing to do. It's the same with a new collar. When you put it on an animal, you really have to break it in slowly. So when your animal goes to work, you work it in short bursts until the collar actually beds in. If it's a good quality collar, it will bed in, and when it has bedded in, the donkey, it should be with the animal for, well, the good part, well, probably the best part of its life. So that will serve purpose very well indeed. Now, of course, you also, in making a collar, we were talking about the point of draft a little while ago. So when you're making a collar, the collar maker has to take into account the point of draft, and the collar is made to fit on that point of draft. And then in turn, again, the collar is also, it acts like a cushion, as it were, for the hames, because it's the hames that really actually do all the work. And it's important also to have the hames level with the point of draft. So there are 3 points with the point of draft that need to be taken into account to get it to work proficiently and efficiently. Now, with these collars, the collars that are being worn here at the moment, these are split collars. And the reason for that is because donkeys in particular have a design fault. In fact, they have several design faults.
Don't listen to him, Larry. You're not blind.
I'm talking about all donkeys. They all have rather large heads. they have narrow necks and they have narrow chests. Now, if you measure your donkey for a collar and it is made to the size of his neck, it will not go over his head. It just won't fit. So the only way you can overcome it with donkeys in particular, you have to use what we call open top collars, as these are, and they're quite common. Now the only way you can get it onto the donkey's neck is to open it at the top, open the collar out and slip it on, and then buckle it into place at the top. Now again, there are slight problems with that, because another important feature of a collar is the fact that it needs to be rigid. It has to be rigid. Soft collars, they don't really work terribly well, because by being soft, as your animal is pushing into it, the greater the load that it is drawing behind it, as the animal is pushing forward, a soft collar tends to close in and becomes tighter and tighter and tighter as the animal pushes, struggling to pull. So it can cause choking problems. The rigidity of a collar creates like a framework that is stable, to which the animal can really push against. And at the same time, the body of the collar, which is the inside bit, the bit that's actually in contact with the animal, that is required to be soft, so that the area against the shoulder or against the flesh is soft, but the collar is also remaining rigid. So as the animal pushes into it, it doesn't really cause any great problems. So, like I said, you have to be very careful considering the size of the collar that your donkey is going to actually need. You also need to have certain clearances. For example, at the bottom here, a collar should fit rather snugly. It needs to be a snug fit. I have to say that as much as 80%, as many as 80% of collars that I see on horses, donkeys or mules don't fit. They're either too big or they're either too small. And it's important to get the sizes right. And again, the only way you can do that is to have the animal measured, to have a collar made for it. In doing that, you can be pretty sure that it will work. Now, I think that is pretty much harness as we know it today. As I've said to you, it has been like this for thousands of years, and so there's no reason for it to be changed. Yes. How do you measure it? That's a good question. What most people do, in fact, most people who own animals and have been working them, and if the collar is correct for that horse, donkey, mule, you can then actually measure the collar. And the idea is to measure, when you take the collar off the animal, you can measure on the from the point where it joins at the top, and measure in a straight line down to the throat part, which is down to here. And that'll give you the length measurement of the collar. And then you come up about a third the way from the bottom of the collar to the widest point, and then you measure across on the inside. and that gives you the width measurement of the collar. And then you come about a third the way down from the top down to about here, and you take another inside measurement there. And with those three measurements, if you give those to the collar maker, he will make them to that size, and it should fit your animal. But
those of you that have the Wova app, Tricia Demers has got her notes on how to measure a collar that basically is the same thing.
Yeah.
You have that information.
Oh, good.
Can everybody hear okay? Okay, that's fine. I just want to make sure.
All right, it doesn't need me anymore. Now, and one more point about the measuring the collar. If you do not have a collar, or you have a new animal that you want to have a collar made for, it's slightly more complex to take the measurements. What you need to do is to measure in a straight line from all animals. I think they are actually designed to take collars, because there is a distinct collar line on an animal's neck. And if you understand anything about animals, you will see that line. And that's the line that you need to measure on. So you'll measure in a straight line from the top of the neck down to the bottom of the throat. And it's important to measure in a straight line, because that gives you the length measurement. And then again, you have to then improvise and devise a pair of calibers, as it were, that you can open out, and then you can place it up under the animal's neck, throat, and up to the point of draft, and then measure the width of the animal's neck at that point. And again, by taking your calibers, you'll put them down from the top, again about a third the way down, and take a width measurement there. And again, given those measurements, the collar maker will make them to that size, and it will fit your animal. And as I said earlier, the important thing about a collar on a horse, and or a donkey, if it's a new one, when you first put it on, it will not look right. It will stand proud, and you'll think, this damn thing doesn't fit. But it will, because you have to allow it, again, like a pair of shoes, you have to allow it to break in. So you start your animal off working slowly, with light haulage behind it, steadily increasing over a period of time. And as the animal, remember, pushes into it, it then molds to the shape of the animal's neck. And when it has done that, when it has bedded in, then that collar will work for a very long time. It will be comfortable for the animal. So it is always better to have a collar made for your animal. People tend to buy second-hand collars. Buying second-hand collars is rather like buying a pair of second-hand shoes. The second-hand shoes will fit your feet, but they won't necessarily be the right shape. And this is the point again with collars. So as I said back at the beginning, it's the most important part of a set of harness. Now I think that's harness as we know it today. And it has been like this, as I keep saying, for a very, very, very long time.
Can we go ahead and take a few questions? And might also ask Steve Decatur, is there a substantial difference between working harness and what we've discussed so far?
I would say that it's everything that's been discussed applies to the working harness. I was taught to put the flat of my hand under at the neck, throat, as a way of doing some measurement.
Yes.
And then just your finger along the side.
Yes, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right with that, Steve. Yes. As again, as I said, I think a collar needs to fit snugly, and so at the bottom you should be able to get a 2-finger clearance at the bottom, and then on either side you should be able to put your fingers in simultaneously on either side, up to about the point on your knuckles, for example, and that you will then know whether it's fitting your animal or not. Yeah.
Yeah. And they do make now collars that have an adjustable cap in the top,
Yeah.
so that you can lengthen the collar if the neck is deeper,
Yeah.
so it's not too tight under the throat.
Yeah.
They're not ideal, but it's one way to find the size in your collar.
Yeah. You're
Use
right.
one of those and see, then you'll be able to take that inside measurement from the base of the collar up to the cap of
Yeah.
the collar, and then you can get a collar that's of a specific size.
You're absolutely right, Steve. Yes, I mean I very, very often. I mean it's been over the past 10, 15 years or so. I get more people coming to see me now and asking me if I can make an adjustable collar. My reply to them is, well, if you can find me an adjustable pair of shoes, I will make you a collar. But I do believe that for the point as you make out, it's a good way to be able to assess the size of the collar that your horse or donkey or mule needs.
Yes.
But it is not. It can't be you can't have an adjustable collar. The collar either has to fit or it does not. Some one of the two.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So eventually, once you know what those size parameters are more accurately,
Yeah.
then you could get a collar that specifically
That will
suits
fit.
those sizes and use that as your working collar.
You're absolutely right. Yes.
I
Yes.
think it's useful to have a couple of those adjustable ones on hand when you get a new animal or the animal loses weight or whatever. The change
Yeah.
comes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes it helps to get a good gauge
Yeah.
of where you need to go.
Yeah. I think this is something that we discussed before, Steve, when we were talking about how animals vary a lot. I think this is a modern day problem. There was a time when animals were working full time all the time, and weight problems were not problems because it remained constant. The animals were busy all the time. Nowadays, of course, we don't use them so much, and so consequently they do tend to put on weight because maybe they're only used at weekends or once every couple of weeks or so. So that's a problem, yes. So the weight, as I said, once a collar fits your horse, it should stay fitting, and it should be okay.
We've got some more questions here. Hey, thanks a lot, Stevie. Right there.
Yeah.
I'd like to know what kind of fabric or padding you have between the donkey's body and the harness.
Which is exactly the question I wanted to ask. What do you think of those pads? That happens to be a felt pad right there. But are those a good idea? And what are the options?
Yeah, you can. Yes, I mean there is no problem. The important thing about the saddle is that you need to have. It's rather like a riding saddle. You need to have a clearance across the spine. Your saddle should not be resting on the animal's spine. The tree, which is the foundation of the saddle, needs to be able to rest on the muscle on either side of the spine, leaving a channel through the center. And as for the material, you can use either leather or you can use wool. It's not that important as regarding the saddle. It's more, the lining is more important when it comes to the collar. Leather lined collars are perfectly okay for driving, and when I say driving, I mean pulling small carts, even surfaces. Leather will work perfectly well. But if you have an animal that is working, an agricultural animal, and it's working, say for example, ploughing or harrowing, the pressure on its shoulders and on its breast are constant, and it makes the animal sweat a lot, and so therefore it would be better to have a collar that is wool lined, because the wool will absorb the sweat. There can be a problem with leather lined collars, because as the animal sweats, there is nowhere for the sweat to go, and it can cause rubbing on the shoulders.
Terry, I'm going to hand you this so we can get that mic fixed. I think we're having some trouble hearing, right? Okay. You just use that.
Yeah.
Do we have another question?
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So are there issues as the animal ages? A lot of times when an animal gets older, their frame tends to
It alters, yeah,
things change.
yeah,
So do you then have to, I mean, are there ways to pad the collar for that, or do you have to go and get another collar for the older animal?
No, you can make, but I mean, the adjustments are only slight. You can make slight adjustments to it. As you said, but I mean, as the horse gets older anyway, you're going to use it less, you know.
Repeat the question so we know what you're talking about.
Oh.
Yeah.
Repeat the question so we know what you're talking about.
Oh, what was her question?
Oh, the question, yes, the lady was saying that as the animal grows older, it may fill out, its shape will change. Will the collar be okay in that sense? And I was just explaining that, that it can be altered very slightly. You can adjust the straw. I mean, that's something I haven't discussed, is about how collars are made. The body of the collar is actually filled with straw, and it's straw that creates the cushion, as it were, for the horse to push against. And so you can put more straw in, you can take straw out. We do what's called, as a collar maker, we do what's called plugging. There are some times when an animal is misshapen or has a problem, and you are able then to shape the collar so that you can accommodate that particular incident, whatever it happens to be. So yes, there are ways of moving it around and getting it to shape up again. Yeah.
Can you show us on the donkey where the collar should ideally rest, like how that fits? I mean, I'm noticing on there. Can you talk a little bit more about?
Yeah.
If you want, I can take the collar off and we put it back on.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Eric. Yes. You can drop it down there, and we'll get.
While he's taking it off, I have another question, and that is, why straw these days when there's so many, new modern materials for padding?
Yeah, that is a really fine question. I have worked with all the rubbers, the foams, the plastics, the felts, the nylons, everything. And believe me, we keep going round full circle and coming back to straw every time. It works. It's rye straw in particular. It has longevity to it, and it does mold up very nicely to the horse or the animal, and it works really well. The rubbers and the foams and the plastics, I still haven't found a way to get it to work successfully. Yeah.
Is it ever a technique to dampen the collar, the face? not soaked, but damp, and let the animal form that.
Yeah, some people do that as a kind of shortcut, as it were, to get the animal or to get the collar to bed into the shape of the animal. I mean, old time horsemen in the UK in particular, when they got a new collar, what they would do is throw it in the horse trough and let it soak there overnight, and then put it on the horse the next day, you know, and get it to mold in just that little bit quicker. But that really does no favors either to the leather or to the straw. As you say, perhaps you might be able to soak it slightly on the body, and when you put it on the horse, it may, or the animal, it may help to shape it up just that little bit more quickly. Yeah, yeah. Are we there yet, Eric?
Do you want to do that now?
Yeah, if you can just drop the collar off, because I think the lady, I think, yeah.
So I'm going to just drop the collar on Larry here.
Yeah, just take it off. Yeah. Yeah.
Turn sideways so we can see.
There you go.
You want me to turn sideways?
Very nice, very nice.
Oh,
The other way around. The other way.
just a little. Is that okay for Dawn?
Well, if you just come this way, everybody will turn this way.
I'll turn you all the way. Oh, okay. Sorry, Larry.
That's okay. There we go.
Okay, so I'm just going to take that off like that.
There we are. Yes.
Point of draft.
The point of draft. Yes.
All that is off before you put it back on. You said the word.
Yeah.
I don't have a middle picture.
Right.
Where you were talking.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's the point of draft is really more of an art than a science, and it's just through experience and know-how that you are able to find the point of draft on your animal. Now, I think the question originally was where the collar would sit on the animal's neck. Well, if you can, I mean, you have the animal's shoulder here, the scapula, and you want the collar just to sit in front of the scapula, coming down. And as I was talking about a collar line, there is a distinct line, and it runs down like so. And the collar should sit just in front of the scapula here, and just in front of the shoulder, because as this animal is walking, this shoulder is moving continually, and so the collar needs to sit just in front of that. If your collar is too wide, in which case it will sit back more, it will then sit on top of the shoulder, and that will be uncomfortable for the animal, and it will create a sore on either side if allowed to be that way. If the collar is too narrow, it will then be sitting too far forward, and it will cause perhaps choking problems underneath. So these are the important things to look for. And as I said, as a collar maker, I measure lots of animals up for collars, and so with a little bit of experience, you get to know exactly where the collar will fit and where you need to take the measurements from. Sir?
I think we should pick on those small facts that someone can design like this and harness to think, but that specific aspect of the shoulder, especially in carts where people are not using single trees.
Yeah.
I would say that the vast majority of the collars designed for horses will sooner than later create problems in the shoulders, because the joint of the scapular humerus and lentis is much more ruminant than in horses. So the vast majority of the collars designed for horses, except if the animal are using a single tree, so the collar is following the movement.
That's right.
That's more.
That's right.
Not typical collar.
Yeah.
Second aspect is this. that H shape that dentist neck have, especially when they get too fat, that will not fit a horse collar because of the shape. So you should somehow try to find more H shape. And the third aspect is related with the breast collars and the fact that dentists, they have a very short chest, so that chest collar will, in the vast majority of the cases, cause breathing problems.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that is something that I omitted when we were talking about the collars earlier, and in particular with the breast collar. It is vital, absolutely vital, that if you're using a breast collar, you have to work in conjunction with a swingle tree, because if you don't have a swingle tree on there, if the traces are attached directly onto the cart, onto what we call the splinter bar on the cart, as the animal moves wearing a breast collar, it will rub at the front. The breast collar will stay steady as the horse's action moves from side to side, and it will rub it. Within 20 minutes or so, your horse will be very sore. So it's very, very important that if you're using breast collars, you do use. It will cause problems if the collar is not the right size for the animal. If the collar is correct and fits the neck well, as the animal moves, the collar moves with it. And so it should not cause a problem. It's only if you have a collar that is either too big or too small, you will get those rubbing problems that you mentioned. Yes.